Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President and CEO of Carlson Wagonlit Travel, Kurt Eckert.
Good morning. Well, we're going to turn the tables. I'm going to interrogate some terrific travel buyers this morning. I'm really excited about this. At the risk of standing between buyers and lunch, let's dive right in. So we have four very compelling panelists today. First is Isabel Donovan. Isabel is the Senior Manager for Global Travel and Expense Services at Boeing. Isabel has responsibility for travel resource labor providers and partnerships. Her 30 years, Stephen has a background in the travel industry that spans an amazing 5 years. He began his career as a travel agent working for several TMCs, and it was a very natural progression for Stephen to become a travel buyer for the past 15 years. Ray Grieve, who, by the way, is a neighbor of mine in Chatham, New Jersey, is the Corporate Vice President of Travel at New York Life, where he's been for 15 years. And Ray spent 5 years with Delta Airlines in revenue management, consumer marketing, and sales prior to joining New York Life. Denise Trousseau is the category lead for travel meetings and events at Abbott, formerly St. Jude Medical. Denise began her buyer role at St. Jude, where she built a consolidated global travel, meetings, expense, and credit card program in 40 countries. And with over 25 years of travel experience, her responsibilities include managing a global travel program balanced with traveler satisfaction. Let's dive in and put them on the hot seat. So Denise, what is keeping you up at night?
Well, I think the fear of the unknown. Going back to, is it my son going to survive his first year at college, or am I going to survive him being away from home? That fear of the unknown in the travel industry, we've been through a lot in 25 years, from commission cuts, from terrorist attack, to planes crashing, to birds, windows, you name it. And I think we're prepared for that. I think we're okay. It's the unknown. What's going to come next, and are we ready for it? Are we have the right technology? Do we have the right partners in place to help us and help manage our travelers through that the unknown? So that's what keeps me up.
And Ray, similarly, what's the greatest frustration you have in your role?
That's the right question at the right time, because it's hotel RFP season again. So yeah, the hotel RFP season is a long, drawn-out process, and there's really no way around it. It comes back every year, so that's a little bit of a frustration for sure. But now the hotels are pushing more dynamic pricing, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm a proponent of dynamic pricing. It's like the fox is running the hen house, right? Like you're getting a percentage off of the best available rate. Well, who keeps track of that? So, there's issues around that, but really my single biggest frustration is really the security reviews around technology. I won't name the technology vendor, and I won't name which corporation it was, but we were talking about security reviews, and they said it felt like a long, drawn-out colonoscopy. And that's what it can be. It doesn't always have to, but that's a huge frustration. But the thing is, it's necessary. It has to be done. You're taking on new technology, and as a company, you want to be protected. So, but that's something that we all have to overcome. But as we go forward, I think things will go faster and be more efficient. But right now, that's a frustration.
Right. Isabel, as you shift that and think about focus and opportunities, where is Boeing focused in terms of where you want to take your program, and what are your hot buttons?
Well, so we're taking a look at a lot of technology too, and at Boeing we do have some frustrations with that in bringing them on board. But what we want to do is we're taking a look at a lot of new opportunities in our mid-office, some new back-office tools. We want to deploy all the fun stuff that we see out here at GBTA with AI and machine learning and chatbots. We want to make the travelers really efficient on the road and self-service, so that we have the more expensive agent interaction kept for just when something really blows up. But it is hard to integrate all that. I mean, you have to do some real good due diligence to figure out what's important and what's going to be worth the money, and then going through what we call at Boeing's called the fit for use, and same thing as Ray, that takes a long time and it can become very painful.
And for you, what's the biggest challenge of making that selection and then operationalizing it, which is always the most challenging component of introducing technology?
Well, so we have 80,000 travelers, and so some of these tools can be expensive. So they've got to provide a lot of value add, make it easier for the traveler on the road, but also save money. So some of them that can be a cost per traveler, then that really adds up, right? So it's just, I mean, there are so many technology companies out there, and to take a look at them. One of the events I was at last night, somebody was saying, we get invited to so many things, there's so many more suppliers with all the tech guys that are out there, and they're cool and exciting. So it just takes, oh, I'm sorry, I think that's what this is.
It's your earring.
It's my earring. Let's
Very cool.
take this off.
Very cool. So Stephen,
I don't have earrings, so this will be a lot better.
Sorry about that.
Leading at the Ford Foundation, what are the key focus areas for you in running the program?
I think that the main thrust, I guess, within the next year to 2 years is really focusing on the traveler experience. And the push is coming from really employee retention, and how do we make travel an attractive part of getting people on board, keeping them there, and having them do what they're supposed to do. Right. So what we're looking at is how do we operationalize that general traveler happiness, because it's the buzzword in the industry. It's been the buzzword for about a year now. And we have to really drill it down to what is the role of travel managers, and how do we partner with HR and help sell the program, because these are our internal clients. So we're looking at ways like how do we make it safe for them. Safety and security will fall under the traveler happiness. Right. We're also looking at ways to provide apps. There's so many apps that are out there. We're trying to create a Ford Foundation app store so we can pick and choose what apps we have and be able to tell them, here are some resources for you to focus on and use.
We're at an interesting point in the journey of our industry. It's sort of the intersection between traditional procurement, which is about compliance and savings and safety, and a world of choice for the consumer who happens to be your employee and traveler. How do you intersect those, and what technologies are you looking at to solve both sides of that equation?
Well, I think Isabella had touched a little bit on this. I mean, it's you definitely need to weigh in cost in all this. I mean, you can go out there, and there's some great firms out there that are selling real snazzy technology. But if you guys want to sell it to me cheaper, I'll take it. So I think that's a cost. That's really a very difficult challenge, especially for a nonprofit, right? So we want to keep our travelers happier on this hand, and we want tools to make us successful at that. Right. So it's a huge game that we keep playing, and sometimes I win, and sometimes I go up to senior leadership, and they're like, "This is way too much money."
Right. Very cool. And Denise, for you, obviously there's been massive advances in technology, robotics and AI and social media and so forth. There's lots of new travel apps out there in the consumer ecosystem, a lot coming into our world. How do you see that changing the efficiency and the user experience for the traveler?
I think it's trying to keep up with the travelers. Our next generation of our travelers are younger, smarter. They grew up with the tablets, phones in their hands. And so trying to balance here's the corporate policy, here's the safety technology or safety and security side of it to what the travelers want. And that's the hardest, is because they want to use the apps that they use on a daily basis in their personal lives for business. And I'd love to see a new technology out there that brings them all together, aligning with our corporate travel policy from a safety, security, and risk, but gives the end user that experience that they want, and they stop fighting the managed corporate travel program.
Do you see, and as you see that technology evolving and improving, do you see an ability to better capture the totality of spend within your travel program where there may be leakage?
Absolutely. There's so much out there that the travelers are doing that we don't have visual on. Some travelers, even in our industry, we see travelers are going to just pay for it out of their own pocket and not expense it, but that because they want to do what they want to do. So if we say no to something, they're going to do it and find a different way then. And if we can find the right technology, the right apps to have for our travelers to use, we can have that full visibility and truly manage our program.
Right. And Ray, similarly for you, as you look at, I'll call it on one end compliance, on the other end choice, How do you reconcile those two things within your program and for your travelers?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So you have, on one end, you have procurement compliance, which is compelling the traveler to use certain technologies, certain supplier partners. On the other end, you have the transparency of data and consumer choice. How do you reconcile those two differences to win the travelers and keep them happy?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. I sort of rely on the agency for that. I mean, the technology is taking such a leaps and bounds these days. You know, I was over at Travel Transport's booth yesterday, and they were showing something like a combination of CRM and artificial intelligence that they're releasing right now. You know, we've all. You know, when you call like your health provider or something, and then you're on the phone and they ask you to punch in all your data, your social security number, your date of birth, and whatnot, and then you're on hold, and you finally get to talk to a live person, and they say, "Oh, what's your social security?" I'm like, I just punched that in.
I know, it's horrible.
You know, so if you have something like if you call an agent and they have in one view they can see what itinerary you're on right now, but also everything that's going on in that particular city pair. You know, it has a lot of value, and I think it'll make things more efficient for sure.
Right, Isabel, if there'd be one technology change for the industry or for your program that you could envision, what would that be and why?
I love that question. Okay, it would be to where we could provide proactive services for our travelers without any input from them. I mean, I know calendar integration exists a little bit now. We don't use it much yet, but that we just know you have to be at a meeting at St. Louis on the 10th at 8 o'clock. And we push something out to you that says, here's how you're going to get there. And then, of course, they're real happy with it because we want a happy traveler. And they have self-service tools that they can use downline so that they don't have to call an agent if something goes wrong. But we are there for them if that happens. And at the end of all that, we get all this great data. And that's an opportunity we have right now, is to really improve on the data that we have. And we can use data analytics and some predictive analytics as well, so that we can better plan what our costs will be in the future and better help the business units manage their costs.
Right. Excellent. And Stephen, similarly, if you could envision one technology driver that would transform your program, what might that be?
I have one better for you that will transform the industry. Who are the Star Trek fans out there? Do you know the Beam Me Up? I want that Beam Me Up technology right now. And it's funny, but thinking about Isabella and the question, so we're not anywhere near the Beam Me Up technology, but I would love to see, and the other thing that came to mind is maybe talking about warp speed, but I would love to see the Concorde, that supersonic. I'd like to see that back. I'd like to see a return on that. I know it's environmentally.
We'll deliver that in 20 years.
We will? Oh, you guys will?
Well, we're working on it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So it's not a dream.
No, it's not a dream.
So I think that as the world gets smaller and more folks are on the road, there is a need for that. There is a need, and that harkens right back into the traveler experience, right? Doesn't it?
Right. And Ray, you mentioned earlier artificial intelligence. How do you see that personifying for your program for the traveler in terms of something that's different tomorrow than what's happening today?
Artificial intelligence. I mean, you're going to have the choice of, you can sort of choose, you can pick your platform if you want to, right? So I see that going in, like, you're going to book a trip, and you send a text message and you book a trip. Calling it in, that's so antiquated, that doesn't happen anymore. Artificial intelligence, yeah. I think predictive analytics, I think it's great. I think right now the biggest thing that's actually coming out right now, which is sort of the holy grail in travel, at least for travel managers, is like you have you always had three different data streams, right? So you have the travel data, and you have the expense data, and then you have a third bucket where you have your credit card data. So now you can actually merge those three data buckets into one reporting system. So that's a huge step forward already, and that's you know, based on that you can do all kinds of things. You can look, you know, you can see who's booking outside of your program, but you can also see who's renting a car and who's submitting taxi receipts at the same time. You know, so you can go to these people and say, dude, what are you doing? You have a car and you're taking taxis everywhere. So there's definitely a cost-cutting component to that as well. So, yeah.
Very cool. So Steve, as you look at the entire ecosystem of the industry, from
they're right out there.
Many are out here, suppliers, intermediaries, buyers, travelers. What's the most value-added element of that ecosystem to your organization?
I think the most valuable part of this ecosystem are the relationships we build. We are a social ecosystem. I probably have 2,000 friends out there right now. And I think that relationships can make or break a travel program. I think it's very key. There's some vendors that are out there that I've been partners with for 17, 18, 19, 20 years. And I think that the honest, open relationship is key to a successful travel program.
Yeah. Right. And Isabel, obviously at Boeing, it's a blend of doing it yourself and then using outside parties. Mm-hmm. For your program, which is relatively unique, how do you view that in terms of where you drive the most value into your program?
Well, I mean, you're asking kind of like what suppliers do I think are going to be most important? Or
well, for example, do you think TMCs are awesome?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you know, when I was thinking about that question a bit, I just keep thinking about a lot about the technology because there's so much snazzy stuff out there now, right? You know, all those things that promise all these great stuff. And yes, the TMCs, the major air car hotel suppliers, they will always need to be there. They're kind of the foundation, and those relationships are extremely important. That's how we make things work. And in fact, I was just talking to one of our suppliers backstage about that earlier. But the technology companies and all the technology support out there is going to be really important for us. And TMCs are good at putting that together and being intermediaries. Right. But I'd say more technology than anything.
Right. Well, one of the things I hear as I go about my job and talking to our clients and prospects is that duty of care or the safety and security of the traveler, whereas 10 or 15 years ago it was on the checklist, it is absolutely job number one of all of the buyers in the audience today. So Denise, as you think about that, what changes have you seen around duty of care, not just for Abbott and St. Jude's, but more generally in the marketplace? What do you think you need to do to really capture this?
I think that the suppliers in this room and the people in the industry have really taken us to the next level. When something happens now, I'm confident that what we have in place is going to give us the details and the data that we need to track our travelers. How many years ago, Ray and I were at an event together, and we were sitting in the hallway. I mean, sitting down, tracking our travelers during the Paris attack, trying to identify where they were. We looked at each other and we're like, what's everyone else in there doing? Like, do they have a team that does this? Why are we the only two sitting out here trying to find our travelers? But that's what it took then. Right. And you know, now, something happens, boom, the reports are there, the data's there, the teams are in place because the industry has allowed our companies to understand that duty of care is important, and they've now taken on an additional role within the organization, which has taken it off my plate and put it more onto their plate. So now they're tracking it and they're identifying it for us. But I think it's critical. I mean, it's unfortunate that bad things had to happen in order for companies to realize we can't just let everyone do their own thing.
Right. Now, and there are great tools out there now for traveler safety and security, but Ray, let me throw a curveball at you. So NDC has been out there, new distribution capability. It seems like the rhetoric is being pushed aside, and there may be a real commercial and technology reality of NDC happening. One of the key challenges is with a reservation made in the host system of the airline versus real-time synchronization with the PNR that's being used to service the traveler. If a booking is made at a program or it's an NDC booking made in the system of the airline rather than the PNR system of record, how do you manage safety and security for the travelers without the TMC having knowledge of the traveler at all times?
Well, as I said before, if you have your 3 data streams combined, so you can look at your credit card data and your expense data, then that's one thing that you can discover that. I think there's you got to train your travelers. There's a couple of things with that. Obviously the best practices are that you have to have your employees have to have access to medical and security services, right? But you have to educate them, because if they don't know that exists, then you can have the best program and the best tools in the world, but nobody's going to use it. If you have another best practice would be you have senior backing, senior management backing. When you roll out things or when you enforce a risk management program, it's a lot easier to do that if you have senior management behind you. You got to review your program every year, because it's almost like a moving target. The world is changing and your travelers are changing. There's more and more millennials that are traveling right now. Millennials are about shared accommodations and about high adventure stuff when they do stuff, when they go on a trip, and that's all fine. But as a company, you need to think about that, and you need to have some kind of policy around that. And then. So as long as you train them and you point those things out, I think it goes a long way to keeping travelers in your program. And as I said before, there's technology, of course, to do that as well. And I want to just make one more comment about duty of care. The red-headed stepchild in terms of duty of care is oftentimes cybersecurity. People always think about terrorist attacks and the things that can happen, but people are still traveling with thumb drives. Your laptop can get stolen, and there may be sensitive data on that laptop. People may be able to even get into your company system with your laptop. Mm-hmm. So it's really important that you have a policy around it and you train people properly.
Hear, hear. So Denise, you've had a storied career in the travel industry. Did you ever expect to be sitting in this seat today, and what's been the biggest surprise for you in your career?
I never thought I'd be sitting here today, so I think the biggest surprise for me in the industry is how it looks today is similar to how it looked when I started. And it needs to change. How we buy travel, how we sell travel, how we travel. We need to get to the next level so that those millennials, when they come in, we can support them. We need to be better than we were yesterday and learn from our mistakes and be stronger in the future as we look at new opportunities and take new challenges and new risks.
So Stephen, same question to you, but building on that, not only what's the biggest surprise, but what do buyers need to do as advocates to direct this industry more so than perhaps buyers do already?
I think we need to sit down at the table with the suppliers and have open and honest conversations about what our goals are. We're not going to get to that end point without being completely upfront and transparent about what we need and how we're going to get there and how we're going to get there together. I think a lot of the friction that I've seen in the industry in past is that both parties aren't upfront and honest with each other. Right. If I'm going to buy something from you or partner with you on a product, I'm going to ask you, or can you do this? Here is my end game. And simultaneously, I'll share with you how much money I have, and can you work with me to get me to that end point?
Right. And Isabel, I'll give you the last word here. Okay. So what's the one thing you want to see change next year versus this year in terms of the narrative in this industry?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. Do I want to see change? I kind of going to go on with what Stephen was saying too, is just the whole partnership. I think there's great partnership now, but maybe just listening more to what we need and creating value and coming out with the technology. I mean, there's a lot of buzzwords and a lot of fancy things, but just something that really provides value and is going to keep our travelers on the road safe and efficient and save us money at the same time. Right. So
I'm always amazed at the complexity that each of you has in your roles in managing the demands of procurement, of HR, and of the traveler, which are three very disparate things. But My hat's off to you for the great work that you do. Ladies and gentlemen, 4 great panelists. Thank you.